update time. End of the last episode, we saw the car getting loaded onto the trailer to go up to Northampton Motorsport. I also had a little bit of a whinge about not liking to rely on other people to do stuff that I couldn't do myself. I needn't have had any of those preconceptions about Northampton Motorsport because they were absolutely spot on. We took the car up on the Thursday, but it wasn't actually booked in until the following Monday. And it only took until about 11 o'clock on the Monday morning for me to know that I'd made the right decision of it going there. By that point, they had made a start straight away on finding out why it wasn't idling quite right. They'd done all the usual spark plugs and coils and leads and checked the timing and all that shenanigans. Moved on to the injectors. They had the injectors out of the car, flow tested them as static, all absolutely fine. Decided to flow test them pulsing as well, and it became apparent that one of them was about 12% out of spec compared to the other three. So yeah, very annoying, but they had, in a matter of hours, found and fully diagnosed an issue that I didn't even know existed, so props to them for that. So Troy got on the phone to me, one of the guys there, and obviously let me know this news. Annoyingly, he said that the injectors that I've got on it, they wouldn't really recommend, which is in total contradiction to what Gen V, the manufacturer of the throttle bodies, told me, as they're one of the sets that they recommended that I have. So begrudgingly, I agreed for Northampton Motorsport to put in a set of Bosch units instead. So within, again, an hour or so of that conversation, they had the Bosch units installed and it was idling far nicer than it was before, so great stuff. They then moved on to the corner weighting and geometry setup and got on really well with that. Got it pretty much bob on 60-40 front to rear. Pretty good for a front engine, front wheel drive car, to be fair. And again, pretty much bang on 50-50 left to right and cross corner as well. So really, really happy with that. Total weight was just a smidgen over 1.1 tonnes, so 1100k. In American money, that is, I think, around about £2,500. If I'm honest, I was hoping it would be a bit closer to a tonne, but in reality, it was probably around about what I was expecting. It's around about stock weight for a Del Sol, and you've got to remember that it's not a completely stripped out track car. It's still got some kind of sound system. It's got carpets, it's got trims, all the stock heating setups. It's even got electric windows, for God's sake. And not to mention, there is a lot of extra scaffolding in it, so for it to still come in at stock weight is really pretty good. I can't really complain at that, to be honest. I could certainly get it nearer to a tonne if I wanted to, but not without compromising the livability of the car, so it's not something I'm prepared to do. So yeah, corner weighting and geometry setup all done. Moved on to the mapping. In total, I think it had about 5 hours or so of dyno time, so a lot of dyno time. They spent a good portion of time, completely rewrote the map, by the way, completely started again, mapped it a little bit differently to how it was done before, and just made sure it was absolutely spot on throughout the whole rev range. Also did a little bit of tweaking, or quite a lot of tweaking, I think, actually, on the cold start, trying to get the cold start nailed. It's still not great, but it's always going to be a compromise with the setup that I've got because there's no idle control valve. So the only idle control you've got is literally winding the throttle bodies open and shut. Hot start, absolutely fine, lovely. Cold start, workable. So can't really ask any more than that. So numbers, obviously the most interesting thing. Finished up on 222 horsepower at the flywheel, 147 pounds-foot of torque, and peak power comes in at 8,800 RPM, so she is now a little screamer. Doesn't tell you the whole story at all. The actual graph is really, really nice. Nice linear power delivery and loads of torque. throughout the whole rev range. Well, I say loads. For a Honda, it's quite a lot.
I'm trying to elevate small talk to medium talk.
Was losing sync a little bit right at the top end, so slight kind of intermittent misfire. That could well be done to the issue that we spoke about before with the crank signal. Equally, it could just have been down to the super hot temperatures in the booth. But they didn't seem to think it was a major issue. I'm not going to be holding it up at 8,800 RPM every day of the week, so I don't think it's going to be an ongoing issue really. But yeah, Northampton Motorsport were excellent, and the time they put into it really does show because it drives lovely. Haven't driven it all that much. Did take a trip up to Classic Motor Hub, a place called Classic Motor Hub in Bybury for one of their open days, and then from there went on to Caffeine and Machine. My friend Shaden was having a bit of a retro Toyota gathering which I gate crashed. Drove really well, despite it being super hot that day, and I think we found every single bit of traffic between the Classic Motor Hub and Caffeine and Machine. So real test on the car, but held super solid temperatures. Cabin and driver temperature probably a little bit warmer than I would have liked, to be fair. I was a little bit broken, but yeah, the car was solid, absolutely solid. Something that I had noticed before it went to Northampton Motorsport, and certainly something that they picked up on whilst it was there, was it had a bit of an oil leak. And on investigation, there was actually a bit of a coolant leak as well after I got it back. Had it up on the stands. Coolant leak looked like it was coming from a hose barb on the back of the block that did go to the factory water to oil cooler, which obviously been removed, gone in the bin a long time ago. So I whipped that off, resealed the threads, stuck it back on, and that seems to have cured that. The oil mainly looked like it was coming from the sub gasket. So I ordered up one of the Felpro ones, which are supposed to be the dog's danglies for sorting out sub gasket leaks on B series engines. Whipped the old one off. Not too surprised that it was leaking, to be fair, because there was no RTV on it at all. All of the guides on the internet show that you should put RTV in 4 separate places on the gasket just to seal up mating faces in the block. None at all on the old one. So put the Felpro one in with the RTV in the correct places, and there is still a bit of a leak, but it's certainly far less than there was before. I have my suspicions that it's actually coming from the oil cooler sandwich plate, the Mishimoto one, so I'll see if I can order up a couple of gaskets for that, and then that should cure the leak completely. Only other things I've done to the car since having it back are I tried to fit a super cheap tinted sunstrip I got off of eBay, and sure enough it was super cheap for a reason, because it was utter rubbish. Fortunately, I found an offcut of the satin black vinyl that I've used throughout this on the side skirts and the trims and stuff. That went on far nicer, so we'll stick with that. And on a sticky bit of vinyl theme, also finally put the branding stickers back on my Advan RGs, which really do finish those off. The only other thing I think I've done is made a start on making the splitter under tray that I've been banging on about for a few episodes now. Still needs a little bit of tweaking, modification to get where I want it to be, but it's getting there, to be fair. So we'll go over that in a bit more detail in a later episode. And pretty much up to date now. Eagle-eyed of you will probably notice that I'm not in my usual haunt of the garage. In fact, I'm not even in my house at all. I am in fact in a hotel room in Gainsborough, ready for a track day tomorrow at Blyton Park, so that's going to be the real test. I mean, it drove faultlessly again up here, 150 miles or so from my house, but it's one thing trundling up some A roads and some motorways, completely another thrashing it on a track. So that will be the proper test, the proper shakedown, and fingers crossed everything goes smoothly, because I have got to drive the thing home again.
That's a really bad sign.